I have to run away.
They say running away solves nothing. But when staying means you might not survive the night, running becomes your only option. I had $247, a baby on the way, and a husband who would kill me if he found me. What I did next, even I didn't see coming. It's 2 a.m. I'm hiding in a gas station bathroom on the outskirts of Portland. The fluorescent light above me is flickering, buzzing like an angry hornet. There's graffiti scratched into the stall door and the smell of industrial cleaner mixed with something I don't want to identify. My hands won't stop shaking as I count the crumpled bills in my lap for the 3rd time, hoping somehow the number will be different. 20. Another 20. 5 wrinkled ones. A 10 that's been folded so many times it's soft as fabric. I smooth each bill out carefully, like if I'm just neat enough about it, more money will magically appear. $100. $150. $220. $247. $247. That's everything I have in the world. That's all that stands between me and sleeping on the street. Between me and going back to him. I'm 7 months pregnant. My belly is so swollen I can barely see my feet anymore. The baby kicks, a sharp jab right under my ribs, and I press my hand there instinctively. There's a bruise blooming across my left cheekbone, purple-black and tender. Every time I blink I can feel the swelling. It throbs in time with my heartbeat. In my other hand I'm holding my wedding ring. White gold, princess-cut diamond, half a carat. The ring Regina Pierce slipped onto my finger 15 months ago while promising to love and cherish me. The ring I finally took off an hour ago while standing in our kitchen, listening to him snore off his rage upstairs. I whisper to my daughter in that filthy bathroom, my voice breaking. We're going to be okay, baby girl. I promise you. We're going to be okay. But I don't know if that's true. All I know is if I go back to that house, if I'm still there when he wakes up, one of us might not survive. Maybe both of us. But here's what I need you to know. 18 months from this moment, I'm standing in a courtroom wearing a Navy power suit I bought with money I earned myself. My hair is styled. My shoulders are back. And sitting across from me at the defendant's table is Donovan. Still handsome. Still wearing that $3,000 suit. Still looking like the respectable attorney everyone trusts. Except now the judge has just read the verdict. And the look on Donovan's face when he realizes he's lost, when that mask of control finally cracks and everyone can see the rage underneath, that look makes every terrifying moment worth it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because to understand how I ended up in that gas station bathroom, you need to know who I was before Donovan. Before the fear. Before I became someone I didn't recognize. 3 years ago I was 26 and working as a junior accountant at a firm in Portland. My name is Regina Rose. I had auburn hair I always wore in a practical ponytail because I didn't have time for anything fancy. Green eyes that my coworker said lit up whenever I talked about spreadsheets and tax codes. Yeah, I was that person who actually enjoyed balancing accounts and finding misplaced decimals. I worked in a beige cubicle on the 3rd floor with a view of the parking lot and a succulent on my desk that was slowly dying because I kept forgetting to water it. It wasn't glamorous. But I loved that job. I loved that numbers always made sense, that they never lied, that everything had to balance in the end. Here's what you really need to know about me though. I grew up in foster care. 6 different homes between ages 8 and 18. 6 different families who made it very clear I was temporary. That I shouldn't get too comfortable. That I shouldn't unpack completely or put pictures on the walls or get attached to anything or anyone. I learned early that I was always one phone call away from packing my things and moving on. Too difficult. Too quiet. Too expensive. Not the right fit. Whatever excuse they needed. I had no family. No one to call on my birthday or help me move or co-sign a lease or teach me how to do my taxes. When I turned 18, the state was done with me. The checks stopped. The social workers stopped calling. I aged out of the system with a high school diploma, a garbage bag full of clothes, and nobody to call if things went wrong. Some kids who age out end up homeless. Some end up in abusive relationships because at least it's a roof. Some end up dead. I ended up working 2 jobs while putting myself through community college. Morning shift at a coffee shop, evening shift at a grocery store, classes squeezed in between. I survived on ramen noodles and determination. I studied accounting because it was practical. Because accountants always had jobs. Because I never wanted to depend on anyone ever again. I got my associate's degree, applied to 53 positions, got rejected 52 times. Henderson and Associates finally took a chance on me, probably because I was desperate enough to accept less than I was worth. But I didn't care. I had a real job, a career, a cubicle with my name on it. I'd built myself from nothing. Clawed my way up from poverty and a system that told me I'd never amount to anything. I was independent, self-sufficient, proud. Maybe that's exactly why I didn't see Donovan Pierce coming. I met him at a networking event on a rainy Thursday in October. One of those forced professional mixers where they serve cheap wine and cubes of sweaty cheese, and everyone stands around awkwardly pretending they want to be there. I was hiding by the refreshment table, scrolling through my phone to look busy when this man walked up to me. Donovan Pierce. Tall, easily 6'2". Dark hair perfectly styled. Wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He had this smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room, like everything you said was fascinating. He introduced himself. Attorney at a downtown firm. Corporate law, estate planning, the respectable stuff. He asked what I did, and when I said accountant, he didn't do what most people do. He didn't let his eyes glaze over and look for someone more interesting to talk to. Instead, he leaned in. Asked questions. What kind of accounting? What did I enjoy about it? What got me into the field? And he actually listened to my answers. Made eye contact. Asked follow-up questions like he genuinely cared. For someone who'd spent most of her life being invisible, having Donovan Pierce pay attention to me felt like standing in sunlight after years in the cold. We talked for 2 hours. Everyone else left. The venue staff started cleaning up. We stayed by that refreshment table with our plastic cups of wine, talking about everything. Work, life, dreams. And then he asked about my background. I told him about foster care. This was always my test. The moment when guys either got uncomfortable and disappeared, or they gave me that pitying look that made me feel small. But Donovan did neither. He reached out and touched my arm. Looked me right in the eyes. Told me I was strong. That I was remarkable for building a life from nothing. That most people with my background would have given up, but I fought. I won. He looked at me like I was someone extraordinary. Do you have any idea what that feels like when you've spent your whole life being shuffled around like an unwanted package? When someone finally sees you as valuable. Feels like coming home. Donovan asked me to dinner. We went to an Italian place around the corner. He ordered wine like someone who actually understood what they were doing, talking about notes and regions while I sat there feeling completely out of my depth. He ordered for both of us and somehow it didn't feel controlling. Felt like being taken care of. Over pasta he asked about my childhood. My struggles. My dreams. He shared his own story too. Middle-class upbringing in Seattle. Worked hard through law school. Built his career from the ground up. He made it sound like we were the same, like we both understood what it meant to fight for everything we had. 2 weeks later, flowers showed up at my office. Not cheap grocery store flowers. A real arrangement from a florist. Lilies and roses in a crystal vase. The card said, "For the most interesting woman I've met in years." Dinner again. I said yes. And I kept saying yes. The next 4 months were a whirlwind. Donovan took me to restaurants I'd only ever walked past before. Bought me my first designer handbag for my birthday. Nothing crazy expensive, he said, just something nice. Something I deserved. He constantly told me I deserved better. That I'd been alone too long. That he wanted to take care of me. After 26 years of taking care of myself, of fighting for every single thing I had, the idea of someone else carrying some of that weight felt like finally being able to breathe. 4 months in, on a Saturday evening in February, we were at the waterfront watching the sunset over the river. Pink and orange streaking across the sky. Donovan had packed a picnic with champagne. We were sitting on a blanket when he suddenly got down on one knee. He pulled out a ring box and opened it. White gold band with a princess-cut diamond. He looked up at me with shining eyes and said, "Regina Rose, you're the strongest woman I've ever met. You've been alone your whole life. I don't want you to be alone anymore. I want to be your family. Will you marry me?" I said yes before I even thought about it. Before I considered whether 4 months was too fast. Before I wondered why a successful attorney in his 30s was single. Before I asked any of the questions I should have asked. Because when you grow up the way I did, when no one ever chooses you, when you're always temporary, always disposable, and then someone looks at you and says, "I choose you forever," you don't question it. You grab onto it with both hands because you're terrified it'll disappear. We got married at the courthouse 6 weeks later. Tuesday afternoon. I wore a simple white dress from Nordstrom Rack, $79 on sale. Donovan wore his work suit. The courthouse smelled like floor cleaner and bureaucracy. Two strangers from the waiting room served as witnesses. A retired man in a fishing vest and a young woman with purple hair. No reception. No guests. No celebration. Donovan said we'd do something bigger later. I told myself it was romantic. Just us against the world. The truth? I had no one to invite. Lisbeth from work was on vacation. I had no family, no close friends. And Donovan said his family was complicated, that we'd deal with them later. So it was just us. Which should have been warning sign number 1. But I was too busy feeling grateful to notice I was already being isolated. The first real red flag came 3 weeks after the wedding. We were having dinner at his apartment, which was now our apartment. I'd moved in 2 weeks earlier, giving up my studio downtown. Donovan had made this incredible salmon with roasted vegetables. We were drinking wine, everything felt perfect. Then he said it. Casual, like he was commenting on the weather. I've been thinking. You should quit your job. I laughed. Thought he was joking. But he wasn't smiling. I'm serious, Regina. We're married now. We should focus on starting a family. You don't need to work. I make enough for both of us. Don't you want to focus on building our home? On being ready for when we have children? I set down my fork and stared at him. My job was everything to me. It was the first stable thing I'd ever had. My independence. My proof that I'd made something of myself. Donovan, I love my job. We're not even trying for a baby yet. We've been married 3 weeks. Why would I quit now? His jaw tightened. Just for a second. This tiny muscle near his ear flexed and his eyes went cold. Then the smile came back, but it was different. Harder. I just think it would be better for us. You're always so stressed about work. Coming home tired. You barely have energy for me anymore. Wouldn't you rather focus on our life together? I just want to take care of you, Regina. Isn't that what you wanted? Someone to finally take care of you. And there was. The thing I'd wanted my entire life, weaponized against me. I should have said no. I should have seen the manipulation. But instead I heard that little girl inside me, the one who'd never had anyone want to take care of her. And she whispered, don't ruin this. He loves you. No one else ever has. I told him I'd think about it. Over the next 2 weeks, Donovan was perfect. Coffee in bed every morning. Sweet notes on the mirror. Constant, I love yous. He talked about our future, the children we'd have, the life we'd build together. He made it sound beautiful and safe. He also started pointing things out. How tired I looked after work. How the commute was draining me. How much happier I seemed on weekends. He never explicitly demanded I quit again. He was too smart for that. He just planted seeds. Made suggestions. Painted a picture of a life where I didn't have to struggle anymore. I gave my 2 weeks notice on a Friday in April. My boss called me into her office, asked if I was sure. Told me I had a future at the firm. I said I was sure. I was starting a new chapter. Focusing on family. She wished me well, but I could see the concern in her eyes. Lisbeth took me out for drinks on my last day. She said she was happy for me, but then she grabbed my hand and said something I'll never forget. Regina, promise me you'll stay in touch. Promise me you won't disappear. I've seen this before. Promise me that won't be you. I promised. I meant it. I had no idea I was about to break that promise in the worst way possible. My last day was a Thursday. I packed up my cubicle. The dying succulent. A coffee mug. My community college diploma in its cheap frame. Everyone signed a card. Someone brought cake. I walked out of that building carrying my small cardboard box, feeling this strange mix of sadness and hope. I had no idea I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. I had no idea that by giving up that job, I'd handed Donovan exactly what he wanted. Complete control. And I definitely had no idea that less than a year later, I'd be hiding in that gas station bathroom at 2 a.m, 7 months pregnant, counting $247 with a bruise on my face and nowhere to go. If you're watching this and thinking, how could she not see it coming? Then you need to hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is about to show you exactly how fast an intelligent, independent woman can end up trapped. Can happen to anyone. It happened to me. So let me ask you something. Have you ever ignored a red flag because you wanted so badly to believe someone loved you? Drop a comment below because what happened after I quit that job is going to change how you see everything. The first 3 months after I quit my job, I told myself everything was fine. Better than fine, actually. I was building a life. Building a home. Isn't that what I'd always wanted? I'd wake up in the morning and Donovan would already be dressed for work, smelling like expensive cologne and coffee. He'd kiss my forehead and tell me to have a good day. I'd spend my mornings cleaning the apartment, doing laundry, going to the grocery store. In the afternoons, I'd watch cooking shows and try new recipes so I could impress him at dinner. I told myself this was what happy wives did. This was what having a family looked like. But things started changing in small ways. Ways I told myself I was imagining. Month 3 of our marriage, I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone when Donovan came home from work. He hung up his jacket, loosened his tie, and then he saw me with my phone. His expression shifted. Something cold flickered across his face. "Who are you texting?" I looked up, confused. "No one. Just scrolling through social media." He walked over and held out his hand. "Let me see." I laughed nervously. "What? Why?" "I just want to see." "Is that a problem? Do you have something to hide?" The way he said it made my stomach twist. Like I was guilty of something. Like I'd done something wrong. So I handed him my phone. What else was I supposed to do? He scrolled through it for what felt like forever. My text messages. My call log. My social media. Then he stopped on a text from Lisbeth, my old coworker. She'd sent me a message 2 days earlier asking how I was doing, if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. "Who's this?" His voice was sharp. "That's Lisbeth. I told you about her. She worked with me at Henderson and Associates." "Why is she calling you? Why does she want to see you?" "She's my friend, Donovan. She's just checking in." He stared at the phone for a long moment, then looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Suspicious. Almost angry. "I don't like you talking to people from your old job. They don't understand our life now. They'll try to make you dissatisfied. Make you question our choices." "Donovan, she's just..." "Did you respond to her?" "No. I was going to, but..." "Don't. You don't need friends from your old life. You have me now. We're building something new. Together. Just us." He handed back my phone and walked into the kitchen like the conversation was over. Like he'd just told me what to make for dinner, not who I was allowed to talk to. I sat there on the couch staring at my phone, feeling this creeping sense that something was very wrong. But then he called from the kitchen asking what I wanted to drink with dinner, his voice warm and loving again, and I told myself I was overreacting. That became the pattern. He checked my phone randomly. Ask who I was talking to. Who had called. Why I needed to go out. Where I was going. When I'd be back. At first, I told myself he was just interested in my day. That this was what couples did. They shared everything. But then came the money. I realized about a month after quitting my job that I didn't have access to our bank account. Donovan had set everything up and it was all in his name. My name wasn't on anything. When I asked him about it, he said it was simpler this way since he was the one working. He'd handle the finances. I didn't need to worry about it. But what if I need to buy something? I asked. He pulled out his wallet and handed me 5 $20 bills. Here. This should be enough for the week. For groceries and whatever you need. Just keep the receipts so I know where the money's going. $50 a week. For everything. Groceries, toiletries, anything I might need. I'd been making $45,000 a year at my old job. I'd supported myself completely. And now I was being given an allowance like a child. Donovan, $50 isn't very much. Groceries alone usually cost more than that. Then shop smarter. Buy generic brands. Use coupons. You have all day, Regina. You can figure it out. The way he said it made me feel stupid. Wasteful. Like I was asking for too much. So I took the $50 and I learned to make it stretch. Rice and beans became staples. I stopped buying fresh vegetables and started buying frozen because they were cheaper. I watered down the dish soap to make it last longer. I cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror because I couldn't afford a salon. And I kept the receipts. Every single one. Because Donovan would go through them when he got home, checking every item, asking why I bought this brand instead of that one, why I needed this when we still had some left. I was 4 months into our marriage when I realized I was pregnant. I'd been feeling nauseous for 2 weeks, exhausted all the time. My period was 3 weeks late. I bought a pregnancy test with my grocery money, hiding it under a bag of rice so Donovan wouldn't see it on the receipt. I took the test in the bathroom while he was at work. 2 pink lines. Pregnant. I sat on the bathroom floor and cried. Not happy tears. Terrified tears. Because some part of me, some part one didn't want to acknowledge, knew that being pregnant meant I was trapped. That leaving would be so much harder now. That Donovan would have even more control. But another part of me, the part that grew up in foster care, the part that had always wanted a family, felt this fierce protective love already. This baby didn't ask to be born into this situation. This baby was mine. And I would do whatever it took to protect her. I was terrified to tell Donovan. I waited 3 days playing out different scenarios in my head. Would he be angry? Would he accuse me of trying to trap him? Would he blame me? I finally told him on a Saturday morning. He was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table, drinking his coffee. I stood in the doorway wringing my hands. Donovan, I need to tell you something. He looked up. What? I'm pregnant. For a moment he didn't react. Just stared at me with this blank expression. Then slowly a smile spread across his face. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was something else. Something that made my skin crawl. Really? You're sure? I took 3 tests. All positive. He stood up and walked over to me. Put his hands on my shoulders. Looked down at me with that strange smile. Finally you'll have a purpose. You'll be a mother. My child's mother. This is perfect, Regina. This is exactly what we needed. He kissed me, but it felt wrong. Too aggressive. Too possessive. Like he was claiming something that belonged to him. We need to make sure you take care of yourself. No stress. No going out unless necessary. You need to focus on growing our baby. Our family. This is the most important thing you'll ever do. He said it like it was romantic. Like he was being a caring husband. But all I heard was another door closing. Another lock clicking into place. The criticism started shortly after that. Small things at first. I'd make dinner and he'd take a bite and say, "This is a little bland, don't you think? Maybe you should watch more of those cooking shows." Not mean exactly. Just disappointed. Or he'd come home and look around the apartment and say, "Did you clean today? It doesn't look like you did much." Even though I'd spent 3 hours scrubbing everything. Or he'd look at me and say, "You're really showing already. You should be careful about how much weight you gain. You don't want to let yourself go." Let myself go. Like I was a house falling into disrepair. Like my value was in how I looked, how I served him, how well I performed this role he'd assigned me. I started trying harder. Woke up earlier to make sure the apartment was perfect. Spent hours on dinner, trying new recipes, making sure everything was seasoned properly. I'd put on makeup even though I wasn't going anywhere, just so I'd look nice when he got home. But it was never enough. There was always something wrong. The bathroom wasn't clean enough. I'd forgotten to buy his favorite beer. I was wearing sweatpants at 3 in the afternoon like I'd given up. Why wasn't I dressed? I was 5 months pregnant when we had our first real fight. I'd made pot roast for dinner. Spent all day on it, following the recipe exactly. I was so proud of it. Set the table nicely. Lit candles. Tried to make it special. Donovan came home in a bad mood. I could tell immediately from the way he slammed the door. He'd had a difficult day at work, he said. A client was being unreasonable. His boss was breathing down his neck. He sat down at the table and I served him a plate. He took one bite and his face twisted. "This is dry." "Oh, I'm sorry. I followed the recipe exactly. Maybe I left it in too long." "You followed the recipe exactly and it still came out terrible? What does that say about you, Regina?" I felt tears prick my eyes. "I'm sorry. I can make something else. I can. Don't bother. I've lost my appetite." He stood up and threw his napkin on the table. Started to walk away. And something in me snapped. Maybe it was the pregnancy hormones. Maybe it was months of walking on eggshells. Maybe I was just tired. "You know what, Donovan? I spent all day making this. The least you could do is appreciate the effort." He stopped. Turned around slowly. And the look on his face made my blood run cold. "Appreciate the effort? You don't work. You don't contribute financially. The least you can do is make a decent meal. It's literally the only thing I ask of you. The only thing. You ask me to account for every penny. To keep the apartment spotless. To look perfect all the time. To have no friends. To never go anywhere. To just exist here waiting for you to come home so I can serve you like you're some kind of." I didn't see him grab the plate. Didn't register what was happening until it flew past my head and shattered against the wall behind me. Pot roast and gravy exploded across the white paint. Pieces of ceramic scattered across the floor. He didn't hit me. The plate didn't hit me. But the message was clear. We stood there in silence. I was shaking. He was breathing hard, his fists clenched at his sides. Then he said very quietly, "Clean this up." And he walked into the bedroom and closed the door. I stood there for a long time staring at the mess on the wall. At the broken plate. At the dinner I'd spent all day making now splattered across the floor. Then I got the cleaning supplies and I cleaned it up. Scrubbed the wall until my fingers were raw. Picked up every single piece of ceramic, even the tiny ones, because I didn't want him to step on them later and blame me. When I was done, I sat on the kitchen floor and cried as quietly as I could. One hand on my belly, feeling my baby move inside me. Wondering what kind of life I'd brought her into. That was the night I realized I was afraid of my husband. But I told myself it was a one-time thing. That he was just stressed. That it wouldn't happen again. And for a few weeks it didn't. Donovan was apologetic. Brought me flowers. Told me he loved me. Rubbed my feet while we watched TV. Was gentle and sweet. I wanted so badly to believe it was over that I ignored the fact that he was checking my phone more frequently. That the questions about where I'd been and who I'd talked to were getting more intense. That he'd started coming home at random times during the day like he was checking up on me. By month 6 of my pregnancy, I was desperate for connection. For someone to talk to who wasn't Donovan. I missed Lisbeth. Missed having a friend. Missed feeling like a person instead of just a wife, just a mother-to-be, just an extension of Donovan Pierce. So I did something I knew was risky. I messaged Lisbeth from the library computer while I was supposed to be returning books. Just a simple message on social media. "Hey, I miss you. How have you been?" She responded within an hour. "Regina. I've been so worried about you. You disappeared. Are you okay? Can we meet for coffee?" I stared at that message for a long time. I wanted to say yes so badly. But I knew Donovan would never allow it. So I typed back, "I'm fine. Just busy with the pregnancy and getting ready for the baby. Maybe after she's born we can meet up." Lisbeth's response was immediate. "I'd love that. I'm here if you need anything. Seriously. Anything." I logged out and deleted the browser history. Went home feeling lighter than I had in months. Someone remembered me. Someone cared. That lightness lasted exactly 3 days. I was making lunch when Donovan came home unexpectedly in the middle of the day. He walked in and the look on his face told me something was very wrong. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" His voice was cold. Controlled. "Find out what?" "You messaged Lisbeth. From the library. Don't lie to me, Regina. I have access to your accounts. I see everything." My blood went cold. He was monitoring my social media. Even when I wasn't on my phone. He'd been watching everything. I just wanted to say hi. He's my friend. I haven't talked to her in months. "You went behind my back. Used a public computer so I wouldn't know. That's sneaking around. That's deception." "Donovan, I wasn't." "What did you tell her about me? About us? Are you trying to turn people against me? After everything I've done for you? I took you in. Gave you a home. Gave you a purpose. And this is how you repay me." He was getting louder, moving closer. I backed up until I hit the kitchen counter. I didn't say anything bad. I just told her I missed her. "You had no right." His face was inches from mine now. "You had no right to talk to anyone without asking me first." "Asking you?" "Donovan, she's my friend. I should be able to." The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. One moment I was talking, the next moment my head snapped to the side and pain exploded across my cheek. I tasted blood in my mouth. Felt the hot sting spreading across my face. I stood there frozen. Hand pressed to my cheek. Staring at him in shock. He'd hit me. My husband had hit me. And I was 6 months pregnant with his child. You don't get to have friends anymore, Regina. You don't get to have a life outside this house. You're trying to turn people against me. Trying to poison them with lies about how terrible I am. After everything I've done for you. His voice was shaking with rage. I'd never seen him like this. He looked like a stranger. Like something dangerous and unpredictable. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Because what else could I say? "I'm sorry. I won't do it again." "You're damn right you won't." He grabbed my phone from the counter. "You clearly can't be trusted with this. He scrolled through it, deleting apps, deleting contacts. When he was done, he handed it back to me. You can keep this for emergencies. But I'll be monitoring it. Every call. Every message. Every website you visit. Do you understand? I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Say it. Say you understand. I understand. Good. Now clean yourself up. You look pathetic. He left for work. I stood in the kitchen for a long time holding my phone, my cheeks still throbbing. Then I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. There was a red handprint on my face. It would bruise by tomorrow. I was 6 months pregnant. I had no money. No job. No phone that I could actually use. No friends. No family. Nowhere to go. And a husband who had just shown me exactly how far he was willing to go to maintain control. That was the moment I realized I was in serious danger. That this wasn't going to get better. That if I didn't do something, this was going to escalate. And one day it wouldn't just be a slap. One day he might kill me. So I started planning. Not a big dramatic plan because I didn't have the resources for that. Just small things. Survival things. When Donovan gave me my $50 for the week, I started keeping some of it back. Not much. Just whatever I could skim off. $1 here. $2 there. I'd buy the cheapest possible options at the grocery store and pocket the difference. I paid in cash whenever possible and kept the change. Quarters. Dimes. Ones. Fives. I hid the money in different places. Taped behind the bathroom mirror. In a tampon box under the sink that Donovan would never look in. In the pocket of a winter coat in the back of the closet. Small amounts in lots of places so if he found one stash he wouldn't find all of it. I started memorizing things. Bus routes. Shelter addresses. The phone number for the domestic violence hotline that I'd seen on a poster at my OBGYN's office. I couldn't write any of this down because Donovan might find it. So I repeated it to myself like a mantra. Every night while he slept next to me, I'd lie awake and recite addresses and phone numbers in my head. During the day while he was at work, I practiced being the perfect obedient wife. I cleaned. I cooked. I smiled when he came home. I said yes to everything. I never contradicted him. I made myself as small and compliant as possible because that was the only way to stay safe while I figured out how to escape. The bruise on my face faded. Donovan never apologized, but he was gentler for a few weeks. Like he was testing to see if that slap had been enough to control me. And I let him think it had been. I played my part perfectly. But inside I was counting my money. Memorizing my escape routes. And waiting for my moment. That moment came on a Tuesday night in late February. I was 7 months pregnant. Big enough that I waddled when I walked. Big enough that I couldn't see my feet anymore. Big enough that running would be impossible. Donovan had a work dinner that night. Some client event downtown. He told me he'd be home by 10. I made myself dinner, watched TV and went to bed early. He came home at midnight. I heard the door slam from the bedroom. Heard him stumbling, cursing. He was drunk. Really drunk. I pretended to be asleep, hoping he'd just pass out. But he came into the bedroom and turned on the light. Regina. Wake up. I sat up slowly, shielding my eyes from the light. What's wrong? Are you okay? I lost it. I lost the Thompson case. Do you know what that means? Do you have any idea what that does to my reputation? I'm sorry, Donovan. Maybe what? Maybe I wouldn't lose cases if I wasn't so distracted all the time? If I didn't have to worry about you and this baby draining me? I can't focus. Can't think. And it's your fault. He was swaying on his feet. His words were slurred. But the anger in his voice was clear. That's not fair. I haven't done anything. You exist. That's enough. You're a distraction. A liability. I should have never married you. Never gotten you pregnant. Each word was like a knife. But I tried to stay calm. You're drunk, Donovan. Why don't you lie down and we can talk about this tomorrow? Don't tell me what to do. He lunged forward and shoved me. Hard. I fell backward onto the bed, then rolled and hit the nightstand. Pain shot through my shoulder. For a terrifying moment, I thought I was going to fall onto the floor, onto my stomach, onto my baby. I caught myself on the edge of the nightstand. My shoulder screamed in protest. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. And that's when I felt it. A different kind of fear. Not fear for myself. Fear for my daughter. Because for the first time I genuinely thought he might hurt her. Might hurt us both. Donovan stood over me, breathing hard. For a moment I thought he was going to hit me again. But then something in his face changed. He looked confused. Almost scared. "I need a drink," he muttered and stumbled out of the bedroom. I heard him rummaging in the kitchen. Heard the clink of a glass. Then after a few minutes I heard snoring from the couch. He'd passed out. I sat on the edge of the bed, my whole body shaking. My shoulder throbbing. My baby kicking frantically inside me like she could feel my panic. And I realized this was it. This was my moment. If I didn't leave tonight, I might not get another chance. I moved as quietly as possible. Found my backpack in the closet. Packed the essentials. A change of clothes. Underwear. My expired passport from before I got married, the only ID I still had in my own name. The ultrasound photo I kept hidden in a book. And I collected all my hidden money. From behind the mirror. From the tampon box. From the coat pocket. From under the mattress. From inside a rolled-up pair of socks. I counted it in the dim light. $247. That's all I had. All I'd been able to save in months of skimming and hiding and planning. It wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. But it was all I had. I took off my wedding ring and held it in my palm. This thing that was supposed to represent love and commitment. Looking at it made me feel sick. But I put it in my pocket anyway. Maybe I could pawn it later. Maybe it was worth something. I took one last look around the apartment. At the life I'd tried so hard to build. At the prison I'd walked into willingly. Then I put on my coat, slung my backpack over my shoulder and walked out the door at 2 a.m. Didn't look back. Couldn't look back. Because if I did I might lose my nerve. I walked for 3 miles. At 7 months pregnant in February in the middle of the night. My feet hurt. My back hurt. Everything hurt. But I kept walking because stopping meant going back. And going back meant dying either quickly or slowly, I wasn't sure which. I finally made it to a gas station on the outskirts of Portland. Fluorescent lights buzzing. A bored clerk behind bulletproof glass. I went straight to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. That's when it all hit me. I sat on that dirty floor and pulled out my money and counted it one more time, hoping somehow there would be more. $247. A baby coming in 2 months. A husband who would be looking for me. And absolutely no idea what to do next. I sat there in that gas station bathroom and I made a choice. I wasn't going back. No matter what happened next, I was never going back to Donovan Pierce. I would live on the streets if I had to. I would give birth in a shelter. I would figure it out. Because I'd survived foster care. I'd survived poverty. I'd survived building a life from nothing. And I would survive this too. If you're still watching this, if you've made it this far, I need you to subscribe right now. Because what happened next, how I went from that bathroom floor to that courtroom in a power suit, it's a story about survival that I need you to hear. And I need you to share it with anyone who might need to hear it too. Let me ask you something. If you had $247 and nowhere to go, what would you do? Would you have the courage to leave? Drop your answer in the comments because the choice I made next changed everything. Regina sat on that cold metal bench at the Greyhound station, staring at the departure board like it held the answers to questions she hadn't even figured out how to ask yet. Denver. Seattle. Phoenix. Boise. Just names. Just destinations. Cities where she knew absolutely no one, where Donovan's shadow couldn't reach her. Or so she hoped. Her hand rested on her belly, 8 months pregnant now, the baby kicking hard against her ribs as if to say, "Mom, make a decision already." The bruise on her cheek had deepened to a sickly purple yellow, and she'd pulled her hood up, trying to disappear into the crowd of travelers. But you can't really disappear when you're that pregnant. People notice. They look away quickly, but they notice. That's when the woman sat down next to her. Iris Carmichael. Early 60s, steel gray hair cut practical and short, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt like she'd just come from fixing something with her own 2 hands. Sharp eyes that didn't just look at Regina, they saw her. Really saw her. Running from or running to? 4 words. That's all it took. Regina's carefully constructed wall, the one she'd been building brick by brick since she walked out of that house. It crumbled. Right there on that bench, surrounded by strangers dragging suitcases and checking phones, Regina Pierce broke down and told this complete stranger everything. The control. The isolation. The cameras. The violence. Michael lying in that hallway. The baby. The fear that was eating her alive from the inside out. And Iris? She listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't offer hollow reassurances. Just listened with the kind of attention that told Regina she wasn't the first woman to sit on this bench with a bruised face and a desperate heart. When Regina finally ran out of words, Iris spoke. I run a women's shelter in a town called Millbrook. About 200 miles from here. Small place, tucked up in the mountains where nobody looks too hard at where you came from. I also run a job training program. Bookkeeping, office skills, things that get women back on their feet. She paused, her eyes locked on Regina's. I can't promise you it'll be easy. But I can promise you won't be alone. And I can promise you'll learn to stand on your own feet. Regina stared at this woman, this stranger offering her what felt like a lifeline tied to a rock. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. I know enough, Iris said. I know that look in your eyes. I wore it myself once 30 years ago. And I know that if nobody had helped me, I wouldn't be here offering to help you. 20 minutes later, Regina was on a bus heading to Millbrook. Not Denver. Not Seattle. Not anywhere she'd planned. But maybe, just maybe, somewhere she could actually survive. Millbrook wasn't what Regina expected. Population 8,000, surrounded by mountains that felt more like protection than prison. Main Street with a hardware store, a diner, a library, a few shops that had been there since the 50s. The kind of place where people still waved at strangers and knew their neighbors' names. The shelter was a converted Victorian house on Maple Street. 3 stories, painted soft blue with white trim, a wraparound porch with rocking chairs. You'd never know from the outside that inside lived 12 women and children, all refugees from their own personal wars. Iris showed Regina to her room on the 2nd floor. Small, clean, 2 twin beds with handmade quilts. Her roommate was already there. Tegan Wu, 23 years old, with a 2-year-old daughter named Lily. Tegan had escaped her situation 6 months ago, was working at the library now, rebuilding her life one day at a time. The bruises fade, Tegan told Regina that first night as they lay in their separate beds, speaking to the ceiling. The fear takes longer. But Iris, she's different. She doesn't just give you a room. She gives you tools. And she wasn't kidding. The next morning, Iris sat Regina down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a proposition. You told me you were an accountant before you married Donovan. That you were good at it. Iris slid a laptop across the table. Time to be one again. I run a bookkeeping training program here. QuickBooks, Excel, payroll systems, tax prep. You stay at the shelter, you contribute to the household, and you learn. Or relearn in your case. After that, I've got clients who need bookkeepers. Women who'll give you a chance. Regina stared at that laptop like it was a foreign object. She hadn't touched accounting software in 8 years. 8 years of Donovan telling her she was too stupid, too weak, too dependent to ever work again. I don't know if I can. Iris's voice was firm but not unkind. That's the fear talking. That's his voice in your head. My question is, are you going to let him win even when he's not here? So Regina dove in. Every morning after breakfast she sat at that kitchen table with the laptop, relearning software, taking online certification courses, practicing on dummy accounts Iris provided. Her fingers remembered before her brain did. Debits, credits, reconciliations, journal entries. It was like finding pieces of herself she thought Donovan had destroyed. The other women in the shelter became her cheerleaders. Tegan would quiz her on accounting terms while they did dishes. Maria, a mother of 3 from Colorado, would watch Violet kick in Regina's belly and say, "That baby's going to be so proud of her mama." Even the children would tiptoe around the kitchen table when Regina was studying, understanding without being told that something important was happening. But Regina couldn't completely escape her past. Donovan was looking for her. She found out through a Google alert she'd set up on her burner phone. Regina Pierce, prominent attorney, files missing person report for his pregnant wife Regina Pierce. Last seen November 15th. Believed to be endangered due to mental health issues. Mental health issues. There was his play. Make her look crazy, make himself look like the concerned husband. Regina showed the article to Iris, her hands shaking. He's controlled the narrative for 8 years, Iris said calmly. But narratives can be rewritten. When you're ready. When you're ready. Not if. When. If you're finding Regina's journey as powerful as I am, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next will show you what real strength looks like. But ready came faster than Regina expected. At 38 weeks pregnant she went into labor. 3 in the morning, contractions that felt like her body was being split in half. Tegan drove her to Millbrook Community Hospital, holding her hand the whole way, calling Iris, who met them in the delivery room. 12 hours later, Regina held her daughter, Violet Hope Pierce. 7 pounds 2 ounces of perfect, screaming life. Dark hair like Regina's. Eyes that hadn't decided what color they'd be yet. Tiny fists that gripped Regina's finger with surprising strength. And in that hospital room holding Violet, Regina was terrified. Terrified that somehow, someway Donovan would find them. That he'd walk through that door and take this baby and destroy this fragile new life before it even had a chance to begin. But something else happened too. Something shifted inside her as she looked at Violet's face. She couldn't run forever. She wouldn't run forever. This baby deserved better than a mother who was always looking over her shoulder, better than a childhood in hiding, better than a legacy of fear. Iris visited the next day, brought flowers and a realistic assessment. "She's beautiful, Regina. You did good." "I'm scared," Regina whispered, not taking her eyes off Violet sleeping in her arms. "I'm so scared he'll find us." "I know. But I have a proposition for you." Iris sat in the chair next to the hospital bed. "My bookkeeping business needs a partner. You've got the skills, better skills than most people I've trained. I've got the clients, the reputation, the infrastructure. What I don't have is someone I trust to grow this thing with me. You interested?" Regina finally looked up. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you showed up here with nothing and spent 3 months teaching yourself skills you'd forgotten while growing a human being. I know you've helped 3 other women in the shelter with their budgets and bills without being asked. I know you're smart, capable, and determined. So yes, I'm offering you a partnership. 25% to start, 50-50 in 5 years if things work out." It was a lifeline. A real one. Not just shelter, not just survival, but a future. A career. Independence. The ability to support herself and Violet without ever needing anyone's permission or money or approval. "Yes," Regina said. And then, "But I need to do something first." Iris waited. "I'm going to divorce Donovan. Wiggly. I'm going to fight for full custody of Violet. And I'm going to expose exactly what he did to me." The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. Tegan, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner of the hospital room, finally spoke. "Regina, he's a lawyer. A successful one. He has money, connections, resources. How are you going to win against that?" Regina looked down at Violet, then back up at Tegan and Iris. Her voice was steady now, stronger than it had been in years. "I kept records. Receipts showing where he controlled every dollar. Photos I took of bruises and sent to an email account he didn't know about. A journal I hid in my bra for 6 months, documenting every incident, every threat, every time he told me I was worthless. Dates, times, witnesses when there were any. I've been preparing for this without even knowing it." She paused, her jaw set with a determination that surprised even herself. "And I'm going to find every other woman he's hurt. Because I know I'm not the first. Men like Donovan don't start with marriage number 2. There's a trail. And I'm going to follow it right to his perfectly polished front door. Here's my question for you. Would you have the courage to turn around and fight, or would you keep running? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one." Iris smiled. A fierce, proud smile that said she'd seen this transformation before and it never got old. "Then let's get to work," she said. "Because Donovan Pierce is about to learn that the wife he thought he'd broken is coming for everything he holds dear." In that hospital room, with her newborn daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms and 2 women who'd become her family standing beside her, Regina Pierce stopped being a victim. She became a warrior. 8 months after Regina walked out of that house with nothing but a duffel bag and a prayer, she walked into her own office. Not a borrowed desk. Not a temporary space. Her office. The sign on the door read, "Carmichael and Rose Accounting." Rose. That was her middle name, the one she'd reclaimed when she stopped hiding. When she decided that Regina Pierce was going to mean something new. The office was modest. 2nd floor of a Main Street building in Millbrook. 2 desks, filing cabinets, a coffee maker that worked half the time. But it was hers. 25% hers to be exact, with a path to 50-50. She'd built this. While nursing Violet through the night, while her body healed from childbirth, while teaching herself to be whole again, she'd also built a business. But she hadn't forgotten why she was here. What she needed to do. That's why Sienna Ortega sat across from her now, spreading documents across Regina's desk like they were building a battle plan. Because they were. Sienna was a pro bono attorney from the Women's Legal Defense Fund, 38 years old, sharp as a knife, with a reputation for taking on cases that other lawyers considered too difficult or too dangerous. She'd taken one look at Regina's situation and said, "Let's destroy him legally. It's so much more satisfying than any other way." "Walk me through what you've got again," Sienna said, pen poised over her legal pad. Regina opened the file she'd been building for months. The journal. 3 years of entries, dated, detailed. Every incident. Every threat. Every time he told me I was too stupid to work, too worthless to leave. Photos I took of bruises and emailed to a secret account. 27 photos over 2 years. Bank records showing he controlled every dollar. Receipts I kept that prove I wasn't allowed to spend money without permission. Witness statements from my brother Michael, who saw the aftermath of the night I left. Sienna nodded, making notes. "It's good. It's really good. But Donovan's a lawyer. A successful one. He'll have an expensive defense team. They'll argue you're a disgruntled ex-wife who fabricated evidence, that you kidnapped his child, that you're unstable. We need more than your word against his." "I know," Regina said quietly. "That's why I've been looking." For 6 months, while building her business and raising Violet, Regina had also been searching. Online support groups. Domestic violence forums. Alumni networks from Donovan's law school and previous firms. Looking for the women she knew had to exist. Because men like Donovan don't start with marriage number 2. They practice. They refine their methods. They leave a trail. And she found them. Jessica Moreno. Donovan's girlfriend for 2 years before he met Regina. Now a teacher in Portland, married with kids, trying to forget those years. When Regina reached out, Jessica cried on the phone for 20 minutes before she could even speak. "He never hit me hard enough to leave permanent marks," Jessica finally said. "Always places I could cover. Always followed by apologies, gifts, promises it wouldn't happen again. He isolated me from my friends, controlled my money, told me I was lucky anyone would want me. I thought I was the only one. I thought there was something wrong with me." The second woman was Natalie Kim, a former colleague at Donovan's law firm. She'd never dated him, but he'd targeted her anyway. Verbal abuse disguised as professional criticism. Aggressive behavior at office events. A pattern of intimidation that drove her out of a job she loved. "I filed an HR complaint," Natalie told Regina during their coffee meeting in Seattle. "The firm buried it. Donovan was bringing in too much money, had too many important clients. They gave him a verbal warning and transferred me to a different department until I eventually quit. I have emails. Documentation. And I'm ready to testify. Pattern of behavior." That's what Sienna needed. That's what they now had. 3 women. 3 different relationships. One consistent pattern of control, isolation, and violence. "This changes everything," Sienna said, reviewing the statements. "This isn't he said she said anymore. This is a documented pattern spanning a decade." Regina filed for divorce and sole custody on a Tuesday morning in April. The papers were served to Donovan at his law firm at 2 p.m., right in the middle of a partner meeting. She didn't see his face when he got them. But she heard he threw a stapler through his office window. The courtroom confrontation came 3 months later. We're back to where we started. That wood-paneled room that smelled like old books and justice that moved too slowly. Regina in a navy blue suit she'd bought with her own money, hair pulled back, Violet with Iris in the hallway outside. Donovan sat at the defendant's table looking every inch the successful attorney. Expensive suit, confident posture. A legal team that cost more per hour than most people made in a week. He looked at Regina once when she entered and she saw it. The flash of rage he'd always been so good at hiding. But now she wasn't afraid. Now she had something he didn't. The truth. And witnesses to back it up. His attorney opened with the expected strategy. "Your Honor, my client is a devoted father who's been denied access to his daughter for nearly a year. Mrs. Pierce abandoned her home, took their child across state lines without permission, and has been living under circumstances that raise serious questions about her judgment and stability. We ask the court to grant my client full custody and order Mrs. Pierce to undergo psychiatric evaluation." Psychiatric evaluation. There was the crazy card. Donovan's favorite move, Make her question her own sanity. If you want to see how Regina takes this man down with nothing but truth and courage, you need to subscribe right now, because what happens next is absolutely devastating. Then it was Sienna's turn. She stood and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Your Honor, we have extensive documentation of a pattern of domestic violence, psychological abuse and financial control spanning the entirety of this marriage. She approached the bench with a file box. Exhibit A, Mrs. Pierce's personal journal, 3 years of dated entries documenting verbal, emotional and physical abuse. Exhibit B, 27 photographs of injuries, all time-stamped and backed up in cloud storage. Exhibit C, bank records showing Mr. Pierce maintained sole control of all marital finances, requiring his wife to request permission for basic necessities. Donovan's attorney objected. Hearsay, fabricated evidence, coached testimony. But Sienna was ready for every objection. We also have testimony from 2 additional witnesses, women from Mr. Pierce's past who experienced identical patterns of behavior. This isn't a case of a troubled marriage. This is a case of a serial abuser who has spent years perfecting his methods. Jessica Moreno testified first. Nervous, hands shaking but her voice steady. She told the court about the 2 years she spent with Donovan. The escalating control. The violence that never left scars where people could see them. The apologies that sounded sincere until the next time. I thought I loved him, she said, tears streaming down her face. But what I really was trapped. And terrified. Natalie Kim testified second. Professional, composed, armed with emails and HR documentation. She described Donovan's behavior at the firm. The intimidation, the aggressive outbursts, the way he targeted women he perceived as threats or obstacles. In the legal profession we talk a lot about character, she said. Mr. Pierce has excellent credentials. But I witnessed his character repeatedly and it was cruel. Then it was Donovan's turn. His attorney tried to control the damage. Coached him to be calm, sympathetic, the wronged husband who just wanted his family back. And at first he was perfect. Composed. Your Honor, I loved my wife. I provided for her. I was looking forward to being a father. Her abandonment devastated me. These accusations are fabrications by a woman who suffers from postpartum depression and has been coached by anti-father advocacy groups. Sienna cross-examined. And she was surgical. Mr. Pierce, you testified you loved your wife. Can you explain why you installed security cameras in every room of your home, including the bathroom? For security purposes. Security cameras that only you had access to? That your wife discovered were monitoring her movements. That's not. His voice rose slightly. Can you explain the bank records showing your wife had no access to checking accounts, credit cards or cash? I managed our finances. That's not abuse, that's being responsible. Responsible? Your wife, a trained accountant, wasn't allowed to manage any money? Had to ask permission to buy groceries. She didn't ask, she just... He stopped himself, but too late. She just what, Mr. Pierce? And that's when it happened. That's when the mask slipped. Donovan's face flushed red. His voice, which had been carefully modulated, rose to a near shout. She just spent money without thinking. He had to be supervised. She was irresponsible, emotional, exactly like she's being now. Mr. Pierce, please lower your voice, the judge interjected. But Donovan was gone now, the rage he'd always been so careful to hide at work, so meticulous about displaying only at home where there were no witnesses. It erupted right there in open court. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She's manipulative. She's playing the victim. I built our life. I provided everything. And she thanked me by stealing my child and destroying my reputation. The courtroom was dead silent. Donovan's own attorney looked like he wanted to disappear. The judge's expression shifted from neutral to something colder. Mr. Pierce, you will compose yourself or be held in contempt. Sienna simply said, no further questions, Your Honor. Then Regina took the stand. And she was calm. Calmer than she'd been in years. She told her story without crying, without rage, just clear-eyed truth. She described the courtship that moved too fast. The isolation that happened gradually. The control that tightened like a noose. The violence that escalated with her pregnancy. The night she finally ran. I didn't leave to hurt him, she said, looking directly at the judge. I left so my daughter wouldn't grow up thinking this was love. I left so she wouldn't learn that a man's anger is something you manage, that your worth is measured by his approval, that your safety comes second to his ego. She paused and for the first time looked at Donovan. I left so she could be free. And so could I. Here's what I want to know. Do you think the justice system does enough to protect victims of domestic abuse? Or do survivors like Regina have to fight too hard for basic safety? Let me know in the comments. The judge took a 15-minute recess. When she returned, her decision was swift. Having reviewed the evidence, heard testimony, and observed the demeanor of both parties, this court finds credible evidence of domestic violence, psychological abuse, and patterns of controlling behavior. Custody of the minor child, Violet Hope Pierce, is awarded solely to Mrs. Regina Rose Pierce. A permanent restraining order is issued requiring Mr. Donovan Pierce to maintain a distance of no less than 500 feet from Mrs. Pierce and the child. Mr. Pierce is ordered to attend court-mandated therapy and anger management for a minimum of 2 years. Child support is set at $3,200 per month. Donovan's face went white. Then red. He started to stand but his attorney grabbed his arm. The judge wasn't finished. Mr. Pierce, you presented yourself as a victim of parental alienation. What I observed was a man who cannot control his temper when challenged, who exhibits concerning patterns of behavior toward women, and whose testimony contradicted documented evidence. This court prioritizes the safety and well-being of children above all else. You will have supervised visitation only, pending successful completion of mandated treatment. Regina didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. Just nodded once, stood and walked out of that courtroom with her head high. She'd won. Not just custody. Not just a restraining order. She'd won her life back. The aftermath came swift. Donovan's law firm, a prestigious practice that prided itself on reputation and client relationships, couldn't weather the storm. The case had been public. The testimony had been detailed. Clients started asking uncomfortable questions. Partners started having uncomfortable conversations. 3 weeks after the ruling, Donovan was quietly asked to resign. They called it pursuing other opportunities. Everyone knew what it really meant. The man who'd built his identity on power, control, and professional success, he'd lost it all. Not because Regina destroyed him, but because she simply told the truth and refused to be silenced. And Regina? He went back to Millbrook. Back to her office, her daughter, her life. She didn't celebrate Donovan's downfall. But she didn't mourn it either. She was too busy building something he told her she was too weak, too stupid, too worthless to ever have. The future. One she chose. One she controlled. One where her daughter would grow up knowing that love doesn't look like chains, and strength doesn't require permission. 1 year later, Regina Rose Pierce sat on the floor of her own living room in her own house, watching her daughter take her first steps. Not a shelter. Not a borrowed room. Not a temporary safe haven. Her house. A small 2-bedroom cottage on Elm Street in Millbrook, with a garden in the back and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. She'd bought it 6 months ago with money she earned herself, signed the mortgage papers with her own name, held the keys in her hand and cried in the driveway before she even unlocked the door. Now 14-month-old Violet wobbled on unsteady legs, hands outstretched, taking 3 shaky steps before tumbling into Regina's arms with a squeal of delight. Again. Violet demanded, in that toddler way where every word is an adventure. Regina laughed. A real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and genuine, and set Violet back on her feet. "Hey baby girl. Show mama how strong you are." And Violet did. 4 steps this time before gravity won. But she got back up, determined. Stubborn. Just like her mother. The house was modest. Nothing like the showplace Regina had lived in with Donovan, with its designer furniture and perfectly staged rooms that never felt like home. This place had mismatched dishes and second-hand furniture and crayon drawings stuck to the refrigerator with magnets. It had laughter in the walls and safety in every corner and love in every imperfect detail. It was home. Carmichael and Rose accounting had grown beyond anything Regina imagined that day in the hospital when Iris first offered partnership. They'd moved to a bigger office space, hired 2 part-time bookkeepers, and built a client list of over 60 small businesses. But what made Regina proudest wasn't the revenue or the growth. It was who they served. Single mothers starting their own businesses. Women leaving difficult situations who needed flexible work. Survivors who were rebuilding from nothing and needed someone who understood that starting over meant more than just new bookkeeping software. Tegan Wu was now their office manager. Turned out she had a gift for organization and client relations that made the whole business run smoother. She'd bring Lily to the office sometimes, and the little girl would play in the corner while her mother scheduled appointments and managed accounts. Building her own life, one spreadsheet at a time. Regina had full custody of Violet. The restraining order was permanent. Donovan had supervised visitation rights, 2 hours every other Saturday at a family services center with a monitor present. He'd shown up 3 times in the past year. 3 times. Too busy rebuilding his career at a smaller firm in another state, too bitter about his fall from grace to prioritize the daughter he'd once claimed to want so desperately. Violet wouldn't remember him. And Regina was okay with that. Better for a child to grow up without a father than to grow up believing his version of love was normal. But Regina hadn't ended up alone. She'd built something Donovan never understood because he'd never valued it. A real family. Not bound by blood or obligation but by choice and shared survival. Iris, who visited every Sunday for dinner and had become the grandmother Violet actually knew. Tegan, who understood without explanation when Regina had bad days, when old triggers surfaced, when fear crept in despite all the safety she'd built. Sienna Ortega, the attorney who'd fought for her in court and became a friend who texted terrible lawyer jokes and remembered Violet's birthday. The women from the shelter. Maria, who'd moved into her own apartment and started a catering business. Jasmine, who was taking college classes online. Kennedy, who'd just left 2 weeks ago with a job offer and a hope in her eyes that reminded Regina of herself. Even Lisbeth had reconnected. Regina's old co-worker from the accounting firm, the one who'd invited her to that lunch 8 years ago that Donovan forbade her from attending. They'd had coffee 2 months back, awkward at first, both of them carrying guilt for lost time. But Lisbeth had cried when she saw Violet and told Regina how brave she was, and they were slowly rebuilding what Donovan had destroyed. That evening, after Violet was asleep in her crib, Regina stood on her back porch with a cup of tea, looking at the mountains silhouetted against the darkening sky. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, terrified, pregnant, standing at a bus station with $247 and no plan beyond a way. She thought about what Donovan had told her over and over, that she was nothing without him, that she'd never survive alone, that she was too weak, too stupid, too worthless to ever make it. And she smiled. Because he was wrong about everything. I thought leaving with nothing meant I lost everything, she whispered to the night air. But I gained everything that mattered. She'd lost the big house, the joint bank account, the last name that came with status, the illusion of security that was really just a cage. But she'd gained her life. Her freedom. Her daughter's safety. Her self-respect. Her future. And honestly, it wasn't even close. What she had now was worth more than anything she'd left behind. If Regina's story has moved you, hit that subscribe button right now. Because stories like this need to be told and survivors need to know they're not alone. Regina turned to face you now. Not the narrator telling her story but Regina herself, speaking directly to whoever needs to hear this. If you're in a situation like I was, please know this. Leaving is the hardest thing you'll ever do. The fear is real. The logistics are overwhelming. The voices in your head, his voice and your own, will tell you that you can't make it, that you're not strong enough, that it's better to stay. She paused and her voice was steady but soft. But staying might cost you everything, including your life. I know that sounds dramatic. I used to think it was dramatic when people said it. But it's true. Women die staying in situations like mine. Children grow up learning that control is love and fear is normal. Dreams die. Selves die. Futures die. The screen showed resources as she spoke. Numbers, websites, lifelines. National Domestic Violence Hotline. 1-800-799-7233. Text start to 88788. Thehotline.org. Local shelter resources available. I ran away with $247 and a baby in my belly, Regina continued. I had no job, no plan, no safety net beyond a stranger's kindness on a bus station bench. I was terrified every single day for months. I had nightmares where Donovan found me. I jumped at shadows. I second-guessed every decision. She smiled and there was steel in it. But today I own a business. I own a home. I co-parent with women who've become my sisters and raise my daughter with a woman who's become her grandmother. I make my own money, my own choices, my own mistakes. I decide what I eat for breakfast and where I go and who I talk to and what I'm worth. Her voice dropped lower, more intense. Most importantly, I own my own life. And the best revenge? It isn't getting even. It isn't making him suffer the way he made me suffer. The best revenge is building something they said you never could. Becoming someone they swore you'd never be. Living the life they promised would destroy you if you ever tried. The final image. Regina in her garden the next morning, Violet on her hip, both of them laughing as they water tomato plants that are just starting to bear fruit. Sunlight streams through the trees. Violet reaches for a butterfly. Regina kisses her daughter's head and whispers something we can't hear, but we can see the love in every line of her face. What would you do if someone you love was in Regina's situation? How would you help them escape? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your answer might help someone who's searching for hope right now. Thank you for watching my story. Regina's voice came one last time. If this resonated with you, please share it. Post it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. You never know who's sitting in a marriage that looks perfect from the outside but feels like prison from the inside. You never know who needs permission to believe they can survive. The screen faded to black, but her final words echoed. And remember, you are so much stronger than you think. Stronger than he told you. Stronger than you currently believe. Stronger than your fear. The life you deserve is waiting on the other side of the hardest decision you'll ever make. It was for me. It can be for you too.